Hello, Joanne.
Hello,
Hello,
Jean.
viewers. Hello, viewers. My name is Jean Graham Jones, and as a member of this year's awards committee, I have the enviable honor of interviewing the 2021 recipient of the Association for Theater and Higher Education's Career Award for Excellence in Editing, Joanne Tompkins. For the next 10 minutes, Joanne and I will engage in conversation about her many adventures in editing. But first, I want to recap very briefly some of her editorial achievements. Committee Chair Daniel Sack provides greater detail in his recorded award presentation. Please do check that out, as well as Joanne's own recorded acceptance speech. Joanne Tompkins has edited two major journals in our field: Modern Drama from 1999 to 2005, and from 2013 to 2017, ATHA's own flagship theater journal. And she has edited special issues for other journals, as well as served on multiple editorial boards for journals from around the globe. She has co-edited two essay collections and served as principal advisory editor for the journal Australasian Drama Studies. And in recognition of her many impressive contributions to editing, the Australasian Association for Theater, Drama, and Performance Studies created an award in her name, the Joanne Tompkins Prize for Excellence in Journal Editing, first awarded in 2017. As an editor, Joanne is known for her generous mentorship, her collaborative spirit, and her meticulous attention to the micro and the macro. I know this from firsthand experience, having had the good fortune to work with Joanne and Maria Delgado when they co-edited Contemporary Theater Review's special issue on editing. Working with a good editor reminds us how publishing is much more than tacking on another item onto our vita. It is an intellectual dialogue that begins with an author's first key reader, the editor. So massive congratulations, Joanne. Let's jump into our 4 questions.
Right.
Okay. Question number 1. Why become an editor? Why and how did you first begin editing?
Well, I've read that nobody's ever born with a blue pencil in their hand. It's not something that any of us decide to do when we're in kindergarten. It's one of those skills that I think we develop along our careers. And in preparation for this, I was thinking back, and I'd actually trace some of it to when I was doing my master's. I was teaching one of those compulsory English writing composition courses. And I was lucky enough to have had a very good education in grammar in high school. And I found it quite amazing how most of my students just didn't have anything like that basis, and how relatively easy it was to teach them how to express their thoughts in a sentence much more clearly. And then as the course moved on, we also moved to creating the structure of an essay. And it was the same thing. It was teaching them the mechanics of both, as you mentioned earlier, the micro and the macro, that was transformative for them. And it was also transformative for me in that I recognized how basic, but also how instrumental in good writing that is. And I think the first thing I edited was a special issue of Australasian Drama Studies on Canadian theatre and drama. This was me as a Canadian when in the early years of my move to Australia. And it provided an opportunity for me to learn the actual mechanics of what it means to put an issue together. And it also provided me with an opportunity to keep my hand in a little bit with Canadian theatre and drama at the time from a distance. So part of it's also that distance thing, that engaging with people in other parts of the world. It's been really rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, you do feel really that you're tapped into our larger intellectual communities when you're editing a journal. It is really quite wonderful that way.
Definitely. And I know I have met so many people through editing I would never have come across otherwise. And it's hugely enriching.
So what makes a good editor? You've edited both books and journals. Is it the same skill set?
Yes and no. So, a couple of things that I'd say from what makes a good editor: patience. It requires a lot of patience, and it does require attention to detail. And it's also that ability to develop a rapport with an author and to get them to trust you. And it doesn't always work. There are sometimes you just don't quite get on the same wavelength as an author, but most of the times I think I've been able to. So I think those three things are really important fundamental things. As for books versus journals, I would distinguish it that it's more general issues of journals versus special issues of journals and edited books. So in a general issue of a journal, you tend to be working on the individual paper in a little bit more isolation because you're not as worried about where it's going to sit in the general issue. I mean, inevitably there's some placement, but by and large it's standing alone in its general issue. In a special issue, you are trying to shape the entire issue far more, just like you are with an edited book. It's very important what this particular piece is saying with or against the piece it's going to sit next to. So you're thinking of editing in both of those dimensions, if we can put it that way.
Mm-hmm. No, that's an interesting distinction, having them both. I know what you're getting at there. But you're also a very accomplished author, published author, scholar with your own research agendas, and as well as working as an editor. And so what has editing taught you as a scholar and an author? What have you learned from your many editorial experiences?
I think I have learned how to improve my own writing by working with others. And one of the things about editing is to read against the grain, as it were, to read things with a view to how someone else might misunderstand it, and to catch those sorts of potential confusions, not those productive ambiguities, but the potential confusions that might obscure the point. So I think I've been a little bit more alert to that in my own writing, but of course, like all of us, we all benefit from editing. As I mentioned earlier, meeting people has been just so instrumental for my own research, and I think it's broadened my understanding of the field, because an awful lot that comes across an editor's desk is far, far, far from her own area of expertise. So I feel so lucky to have learned so much and to have realized that there is a real dynamism in the field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to realize you also tap into what are the trends, you see commonalities that you might not pick up on if you weren't reading all of these submissions.
Exactly. And I think perhaps one of the things that I found most interesting is whenever I put out a call for a special issue, you craft the wording of the special issue very carefully to try to attract people or to attract relationships between various topics. I've always found that however carefully crafted and however general the call might be, there are always lots of papers I never even dreamed could fit into that topic that come in. And that's really exciting.
Yeah.
You know, that even when I'm casting a very wide net, there's still more out there that relates, and that's fantastic.
Also, so much fun to go to conferences and meet your authors.
So good to meet your authors.
After just having email friendships or relationships.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
That's
so
right.
great.
Like long lost friends.
Long lost friends. Yeah, well, that takes me to our last question, I guess. You know, simply put, without editors, we scholars would not have an academic publishing career, or we would not get hired, we would not get promoted, we would not get tenured. And I think it's important to remember that editors are often our first key reader. So with that in mind, I wondered if you had any final piece of advice you would give an emerging scholar seeking to publish that first article.
Well, I think you've put it really well that editors are often our first readers. But I wonder if maybe my advice would be uh, if it might be really useful for people to think of the editors as their fifth or sixth reader. I
Hmm.
think sometimes I've received essays that clearly have had no mentorship, no outside readers. And I know the very first time I put in an essay to a special issue, I didn't have anyone else read it because I just didn't know that that's what you did. I think if aspiring authors um, learned how to engage with that relationship with an editor by sharing their work with more people first, that relationship with an editor could be even more fruitful.
Hmm.
So it's a getting used to people's responses. It's a getting used to where someone else might see some potential problems in the argument. And then by the time the editor gets to it, it feels far less threatening. Not that it should feel threatening, but it just feels like part of the process of writing and refining our work and getting publishing. Yeah, sorry, getting published.
And jumping into realizing that you're entering into a community of scholars and really looking at it as a communal experience in a way. And even if that article doesn't ultimately get published by that journal, it's always improved by that experience. And then you turn around and send it somewhere else, but you get so much good feedback. You can get good feedback from the editor.
That's right. And I can't emphasize enough how much a collaborative endeavor editing is. And for me, it's one of those ways that we give back to the community. We help develop the community and we help advance the skills and the opportunities of our colleagues.
Mhm, mhm. Well, and I really hope that our conversation today, to anyone viewing it, encourages them to not only consider submitting more of their work and getting it out into our larger community, but also to consider becoming an editor, because the world needs more editors, good editors. So I think we'll end there, Joanne. Thanks so much. And once again, my congratulations. So well deserved.
Thank you so much, Jean. It's been a pleasure.